All right, so get this. We're going deep on vampire squirrels.
Vampire squirrels.
You heard me right. Vampire squirrels. And also, we'll be looking at, well, this might sound a bit weird,
Okay, I'm intrigued.
the potential downsides of mindfulness.
Mhm.
Like, what could possibly be bad about meditation, right?
Yeah, you'd think it'd be all peace and tranquility.
Exactly. So we're going to dig into the research and, well, separate the fact from the fiction. You ready for this?
Absolutely, let's dive in.
Okay, first up, those vampire squirrels. We're heading straight to the rainforests of Borneo. Just imagine it. Lush greenery, sounds of the jungle.
Sounds peaceful enough so far.
But then you hear the locals, the Dayak people, talking about these squirrels that attack deer.
Squirrels attacking deer? That doesn't sound very peaceful.
And that's where our so-called vampire squirrel comes in. The Bornean tufted ground squirrel. It's got this crazy scientific name, Rhythrosceurus macratites.
Try saying that 3 times fast.
I know, right? But the looks of this squirrel, that's what really gets you. Huge, saw-like incisors. Like, seriously, these are some intense squirrel teeth.
Oh, hey, that does sound a bit menacing.
And get this, its tail is bigger than its body. Would you want to run into that in a dark alley?
Probably not.
But the question is, does this squirrel actually live up to its vampire reputation? Is it really out there preying on deer?
Well, to get to the bottom of that, researcher Andrew Marshall and his team, they went to Gunung Palung National Park.
They were on a mission.
They spent time observing these squirrels, like really observing them, documenting their behavior. They recorded 79 instances of them feeding.
79. That's dedication.
And you know what they found? Not a single drop of blood.
No blood. So much for the vampire squirrel.
It turns out these squirrels are basically seed-crushing machines. 60 out of those 79 times, they were munching on these super hard seeds from the Canarium decumanum tree and other similar trees.
Wow, those seeds must be like rocks.
They are incredibly tough. It makes you wonder what kind of evolutionary pressure would lead to squirrels needing teeth that strong. Maybe there was a shortage of other food sources or competition with other animals. Who knows?
Like they're the ultimate survivalists of the squirrel world.
Right. But okay, let's go back to those stories about them attacking deer. Are we just totally writing those off?
Yeah, I mean, what's the deal with that?
Well, it's possible they might, occasionally supplement their diet, but based on the evidence, it seems really unlikely they're regularly attacking deer. It's more likely that those stories, they come from a mix of observation and folklore passed down through generations.
So our vampire squirrel is more of a super strong seed muncher then.
Pretty much.
It's fascinating though.
What is?
That Canarium decumanum tree, the one those squirrels love, it's actually super important for the rainforest. So in a way, these squirrels are playing a vital role in keeping the whole ecosystem healthy.
That's a great point. They might not be vampires, but they're definitely little heroes of the rainforest, spreading those seeds around, helping the forest thrive. It's a good reminder that even small creatures can have a big impact.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've debunked the myth of the vampire squirrel. But now, get ready for a twist. We're about to explore something that most people associate with peace and tranquility meditation. What if I told you that meditation can actually have a dark side?
Now that you mention it, I have heard, whispers about that. Where do we even begin to unravel that?
Well, mindfulness and meditation have become super popular in recent years. And for good reason. People are trying to reduce stress, improve their mental health. But there's this growing body of research suggesting that it's not always a positive experience.
Really? What could go wrong?
Well, some studies suggest that about 1 in 12 people who try meditation, they actually experience negative effects.
1 in 12. Wow, that's actually a lot of people. What kind of negative effects are we talking about?
We're talking about things like, increased anxiety, panic attacks.
Hold on. That seems like the opposite of what meditation is supposed to do.
Right, and it can get even more serious. Some people have reported things like psychosis, even suicidal thoughts after meditating.
That is concerning. Is there any research that, that actually looked into this?
There is. Researcher Miguel Farias and his team, they conducted a review of 55 different studies on meditation, and they were really careful to account for things like study size, potential bias, and what they found was pretty eye-opening.
It's kind of wild, right? You think of meditation as this path to inner peace, and then you hear about these intense negative reactions.
Yeah, it definitely challenges our assumptions.
Yeah.
So what did Farias and his team find? What could be causing these negative reactions?
Well, one possibility is that, for some people, meditation might actually be bringing up underlying mental health conditions.
Oh, interesting. So it's not the meditation itself, but more like it's acting as a trigger.
Exactly. It's like these issues were already there, but they were dormant or maybe even undiagnosed. And then the intense introspection of meditation, it kind of brings them to the surface.
So for those people, it's almost like meditation is, well, it's too much too soon.
Yeah, you could say that. And it really highlights the importance of approaching meditation, with some self-awareness and caution, especially if you've got a history of mental health challenges.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Any other theories about why some people react negatively to meditation?
There's this other theory I find really interesting, the idea that the mind might actually rebel against the attempt to control it through meditation.
Wait, so it's like the mind is saying, hey, you're not the boss of me.
Exactly. It's almost like this backlash effect. For some people, trying to silence their thoughts, control their emotions, it just leads to even more inner turmoil.
It's like instead of finding peace, they're stirring up a hornet's nest.
Right. And it reminds us that our minds are complex. They don't always behave in predictable ways.
Definitely not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
No, and that's why it's so important to listen to your body, your mind when you're meditating. If you're experiencing any negative effects, you got to stop. And if you need to, seek professional help.
That's really important advice. So before we wrap up our meditation deep dive, what's the main takeaway for our listeners, whether they're interested in trying it or maybe they're already practicing?
I think the key is approach meditation with a balanced perspective. It's not some magic bullet, right? Like any practice that affects our mental and emotional state, it can have both benefits and risks.
Right. And what works for one person might not work for another.
Exactly. If you're brand new to meditation, starting with guided meditation, that might be a safer bet, either with a qualified teacher or even a good app.
Makes sense. And for those who are already meditating, being mindful of any negative effects and maybe seeking guidance from a qualified professional if they need it.
Absolutely. It's all about prioritizing your well-being.
Okay, so we've debunked the myth of the vampire squirrel, and we've explored the surprising complexities of meditation. Two very different topics, but both kind of prompting us to think critically, question what we think we know.
It's amazing how often our initial assumptions, well, they just get turned upside down when we take a closer look.
Speaking of closer looks, those vampire squirrel stories, they keep coming back to me. The researchers didn't see any deer attacks, but do we know anything about the squirrel's biology that could, remotely support the possibility? Could they even, inflict that kind of damage with those teeth?
That's a good question. I mean, those incisors are impressive, for sure. But they're primarily designed for cracking hard seeds. And from what we know about these squirrels, their behavior isn't really that of a predator. They're mostly solitary, focused on foraging, not hunting.
So it really does seem like seed-crushing specialist is a much more accurate title.
Definitely. But this good reminder that science is a process. We're always learning, always open to new information. Maybe someday we'll discover something new about these squirrels that changes our understanding.
Well, until then, I think I'll admire their seed-cracking skills from a distance.
Probably a wise move.
All right, let's shift gears one last time, back to meditation. I think it's important to acknowledge that, for some people, it can be a really challenging experience. It's not about fear-mongering, but about empowering people to make informed choices about their well-being.
Absolutely. And what's fascinating is that some of the negative effects, like increased anxiety, panic attacks, they seem to contradict the very goals of meditation.
It is a bit paradoxical, isn't it?
Mm.
You're seeking peace and calm, and then, bam, you end up feeling more anxious.
Right. It raises some interesting questions about how meditation affects the brain and why those effects vary so much from person to person. Maybe for some individuals, turning inward, focusing on their thoughts, it actually amplifies those thoughts and feelings.
Instead of turning down the volume, they're accidentally turning it up.
Exactly. And that suggests that, the way we approach meditation, it might need to be personalized. What works for one person might not work for another.
So awareness and self-monitoring are key.
Absolutely. Be aware of the potential downsides, pay attention to how your body and mind are responding, and don't hesitate to get guidance from qualified teachers if you need it.
Great advice. Okay, from debunking myths about squirrels to exploring the nuances of meditation, this deep dive has given us a lot to think about.
It has. It's been a fascinating look at how our initial perceptions, they can be so different from the reality revealed by scientific research.
Makes you wonder, right?
Yeah.
What other truths are out there just waiting to be, well, debunked?
It really does. This whole deep dive, it's like a reminder to stay curious, keep digging deeper, even when it comes to things we think we already know.
So for our listeners who want to learn more, what are some key takeaways they should keep in mind?
Well, with the natural world, it's important to remember that sometimes those local stories, those folklore, they can get mixed up with scientific observation.
Like our friend the vampire squirrel.
Mhm.
Sounds straight out of a horror movie, but in reality, they're actually these little heroes of the rainforest.
Exactly. They spread those seeds, keep the forest thriving. It's a good reminder that even the smallest creatures can have a huge impact.
And then on the mindfulness front, well, it can be beneficial, sure, but it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. Some people might have negative effects.
Exactly. And for those new to meditation, starting with guided meditation, that's usually a safer bet. With a qualified teacher or a good app.
And for those already practicing, it's crucial to pay attention to any negative effects.
Mm,
And if you need to, seek guidance from a professional.
couldn't agree more. Well-being is paramount.
So it seems like, I don't know, the takeaway here is to stay curious, question assumptions, and embrace the complexity of the world around us. Whether it's, a squirrel in a rainforest or a meditation technique, there's always more to learn.
Well said. And for those who want to delve deeper into the research, we'll be sure to include links to the original articles in the show notes.
Happy exploring, everyone. And until next time, keep those minds open and those questions coming in.